Dear TV, desensitize me. Give me more genocide, please. The world is your aphrodisiac, so you stay turned on every minute, every second I breathe. You weaponize greed, kill me with incessant I needs. Got me checking out those and checking out these. Mainstream.
Hey guys, Squirtle here, and I know it's been probably over a week since my last video, but I've been sick, sad face. I'm feeling much better now, so that means another commentary. Yay! My topic today is actually about society and the media and sex and violence and all that good stuff. Now, I wanted to talk about this because another YouTuber briefly mentioned in one of his videos how he found it strange that when he was growing up, his parents never really cared about language or violence much, but wouldn't let him watch anything with nudity in it. And I know there are probably a lot of people who agree with this, but I find this American way of looking at it backwards and hypocritical. Now, I know most parents are more accepting to having their children view violence than sex and nudity, and my parents sort of fall under that category as well. Like, they're okay with violence. I mean, they're not okay with violence, but I've watched the Saw movies with them. My parents are fine with me and my brother playing Call of Duty, and sexual themes, on the other hand, that's another story. Whenever my parents would see a game that had sexual themes under the parental advisory, they would be like, no. Like, it was a long time before there was any games with any sexual themes in my household. And that was probably The Sims. That was probably the first sexual themed game in my household. And even with that, though, to my parents, the bigger issue has always been obscene language. Like, I see kids curse with their parents, even at their parents, but I know me or any of my siblings would never be caught dead doing that. Like, it's weird. I know kids that couldn't watch SpongeBob because of its sexual innuendo and cartoon nakedness with the cartoon non-existent character parts. But, like, really, like, kids aren't even going to pick up on that. But there are just a lot of parents who completely shun the idea of their children being exposed to sex. With my parents, I know that I could ask them about sex and they'd talk to me maturely about it, although I wouldn't, because let's face it, that's awkward. But that's exactly what I mean. It shouldn't be that uncomfortable to talk about sex to your parents. I mean, come on. How did you get here? And no, I do not mean to this weird part of YouTube. But seriously, your parents had sex. It's natural. Sex is something that most people will end up doing, yet it's such a sensitive topic. Meanwhile, something as unnatural as grabbing a man-made weapon and putting 20 shots into another human being is greeted with an, "Oh, that's cool." Like, on one hand, I get it, but on the other, it makes no sense whatsoever. A lot of parents are more comfortable with violence because it isn't real, quote unquote. Like, no parent buys a video game thinking, oh, my child's gonna shoot up the school. But it happens. Violence is as real as sex, and while I'm sure, or at least I hope, that not many kids see violence and want to imitate it in real life, both sex and violence are real-world things that we have to deal with. Yet there's such an unnatural imbalance in the way that the two are portrayed in media. There are games where you can literally torture someone to death while they are begging for their lives, and that's viewed as all fine and dandy, but a little bit of nudity is unheard of. Sexual innuendos are off limits, but you get a trophy or an achievement for killing people in certain graphic ways. Why is the desensitization of violence okay? Of course, genocide or any form of murder is not okay, but since it's not real life and only a video game, it's okay, right? Since it's just a movie, it's perfectly fine. So why isn't sex thought of like that? Sometimes it's not even the act of sex, but just sexuality or suggestiveness in general. Like, people get offended when a movie has a breastfeeding mother, and to me, that's silly. There are parents who won't let their children take a mature sex ed class, but have no problem buying their 9-year-old the latest Call of Duty. They think, oh, a harmless game that my son can play with his friends. But when you throw in the millions of other players, that's when you need to realize that you need to address your kids about this stuff before they learn it from somewhere else. Because let's face it, This stuff is out there, and no matter how much you try to keep it away from your child, there's always going to be sex and violence and bad language. In my opinion, parents need to address these issues before someone does it for them. They need to be open because children are curious, and if their parents aren't open and won't be the one to tell them, someone else will. For me, I never want my child to find out about sex from the internet or a friend. No matter how awkward, that's going to be my responsibility. And I see how it's easy to just define violence as bad and be done with it, and well, sex is a little less black and white and a little more complicated. I get that, but children don't need to be sheltered because, well, it's impossible. Many parents don't like sex in the media because they don't want their children thinking of sex as casual or encourage early sex. But my thoughts on that is to teach them how you want them to view sex yourself. Don't let society teach your child about sex, because society advertises the wrong type of sex. Society is very hypocritical about sex. They advertise sex sells rather than loving sex. We all know that. Society is hypocritical in that a girl wearing barely any clothing is okay, but once that inch of fabric is gone, it's chaos. Most of all, there's a difference between boobs and objectifying women. Honestly, the sex talk is just as important as the period talk for girls. And I know most of you are probably guys, so that doesn't really apply. But really, parents cringe at condom advertisements, but when their kid has unprotected sex and suffers the consequences, isn't that worse? Children need to know, because protection is worth a few minutes of feeling uncomfortable. By hiding sex, it just makes it more interesting and more of a big deal. In my opinion on the whole sex versus violence debate, it's not about how much sex or violence you see. Although it might contribute, it's a matter of good parenting and the kid themselves. Both sexual and violent content are only bad if a kid hasn't been taught what to think of them already, or they choose to imitate what they see. In the end, sexuality isn't sex. Parents don't want their children watching sex scenes, which is completely and totally understandable. But even non-sexual nudity is looked upon with disgust and is strictly censored. Suppressing sexuality only benefits the same media that supposedly hides it. Kids need to be aware of their sexuality, their bodies, and sex in general. Because, I don't know, I just find it funny how some parents are completely opposed to sexuality, etc. But what are you gonna do? Anyway, I'm done with my little spiel, my little, I can't even say that word. Anyway, I'm done here. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Comments are welcome down below in the comment section. Well, yeah, I'm out of here. Bye, guys.